the last couple of weeks. I got some minor feedback. Mostly it was things like formatting and markdown, but actually, sorry, let me see if I can kill those background. But in addition to that, I added some additional content based on some of the recent Capital One issues and some other feedback that I got out of band, as well as some additional reading I did. So I don't think there's a need to read through everything here, but I also added a few more definitions and another overview of what I thought the solution might look like. So basically, just to walk through the high level, we'll start with some definition of a security policy, something that you could express in human terms. I want to prevent people from accessing from the internet. I want to prevent access to a particular volume so that data doesn't escape. Something that we could all agree makes sense. We've got to flesh that out into a specification. So it's not formal at this point, but it's a bit more codified. So it's something like, you could use data log, you could use Rego, you could use JSON, something that's a bit more, or maybe completely computer readable, but not necessarily provable or formally checkable. And then again, you're going to define some parameters that when you feed in some real world context and inputs, AWS role IDs or user IDs or bucket names, these parameters are going to get bound to particular values. And it's kind of what I showed here. You've got a policy encoding, which I'm calling, I think I borrowed that from an Amazon paper. You've got this policy specification plus what they call context, which are particular values for each of these parameters. And then, so the process that then the tooling will end up doing is translating that policy configuration into some first order logic, SMT proof, something that you can then run through a solver, and then query that whether or not it was satisfiable or if it was achievable. So that's the basic overview. So I think the first thing that I'd like to do to take this from what is a high level research project, something that was interesting and useful for me to go through the effort of researching. Actually, how do we translate this into something that might be useful in the context of Kubernetes or cloud native, multi-cloud? It doesn't have to be just Kubernetes, or it doesn't have to be a particular instance of Kubernetes. How can we take this to a tool? I think, one, I'd love to get some buy-in from the different policy projects. So whether this is OPA, whether this is folks like SIG and maybe the Falco side, could be some of the folks that we had on a couple of weeks ago who have different policy languages. I'd love to get a little bit more buy-in from the entire policy community, if you will, that this is a good thing to do, this is a useful thing to do, and ideally that we might be able to get some helpers, some folks. Tim and Torin at Stira have at least verbally mentioned that they'd be interested in helping. Haven't given like a strong commitment or signed on to this particular proposal. But I think they could be wrangled in once we have a more concrete vision and like an actual executable plan for, hey, we want to create this tool, and here's how it would integrate in with OPA or not, and here, how would you like to contribute? Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I am now. I'd love to hear from you guys if there's any groups or any individuals that you think might be willing to kind of step up and say, yes, our project would love to get involved, or in some way contribute.
How's the Capital One incident like relates to our effort here?
Oh, well, from what I understand, the root cause of that was essentially that there was a web application firewall mod security, Apache component that had a very permissive policy that allowed it to pretty much run anything it wanted under. The details are sketchy, but it may not have been running as root, but essentially it was able to run arbitrary things. And it was a kind of a classic SSRF attack that bounced some commands off the web application firewall module such that it then enumerated the contents of, I'm not sure if it was an S3 bucket or some other volume. Let's just call it a bucket, which had a bunch of these data files that, again, I'm not entirely clear as to whether they were supposed to be there or somebody had dumped them there in an ad hoc manner. But for whatever reason, there was a bunch of data tarred up and sitting in these buckets. And the way they exfiltrated it was essentially by bouncing commands off the WAF, which had a very open policy, and then allowed it to enumerate and then actually, I believe, directly copy that data off of that bucket and either exfiltrate it out to another bucket that they had control over or allowed them to add access to another bucket that they had control over. But essentially, boiled down to having these very uncontrolled policies. There were some policies applied, and of course, I'm not privy to the gory details, but it sounded like that was a very wide open policy definition. And, of course, the two different entities, the WAF group, if you will, and the bucket group who are managing these things separately were never in tight coordination. So having some overarching way to kind of vet that policies are consistent, I think would have, maybe not prevented, but certainly would have given more visibility into the risks, or forensically would have given some information as to how the attack was pulled off. But I think, ideally, if you had some overarching policy verifier and, you asked it a question like, can there be access to data from the web application firewall when I apply all of my policies? And the answer came out yes. You would think that would become part of the DevSecOps lifecycle. Running those checks regularly and then closing those holes proactively would have, more or less prevented this kind of an issue, even if it was an insider or a former insider, as the case may be for Capital One. And by the way, I'm all the data I have on Capital One is totally public. I linked it to the sources. There's nothing proprietary here that I haven't signed on.
Yeah. Understood.
Wasn't someone from Capital One came to the deep dive, right? Or is it a different bank?
That's JP Morgan.
That was JP Morgan. Darn.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that they should have come now. But
well, I think that it's not really funny, but the maybe sad thing is that Capital One has definitely been fairly active as an organization in a lot of the open source security stuff. So again, it's like all things, it's always the weakest link that gets you, right? So they've invested a ton of time and energy in open source security. They've spoken at length about what they've built internally, how they use other projects, and from what you can see from the outside, it looks like they've done everything right. They put a lot of due diligence into it, and yet all it takes is one domino to fall, and one hole to exist.
Yeah, that's definitely the hard part. So getting back to the specific questions you asked was kind of recruiting people for feedback or next steps. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, I've gotten some minimal feedback from the SIG security group. Helpful, but I think, folks who are either actively building policy engines and policy languages, or who have actively developed some of the solver tools, or maybe even academic groups that are using the solver tools. Great. Ideally, if Amazon or Azure, who have not open source, but who have been open academically about the types of formal verification tools that they've built for internal AWS and Azure use, if they were willing to either review and or help bootstrap some sort of more open source solution, and any and all of the above would be great. I don't know that, building a set of tools, or even if it's not really building so much as assembling from existing components in isolation of having, a larger group behind it. I don't know if building it in a vacuum would make a lot of sense. I think I'd want a little bit more momentum behind it that says, yeah, this is, I have every confidence it's a good idea, because by definition, it's really just emulating what Amazon and Azure have already done, right? In the tools that they've published about and have in some sense marketed. They have continuous monitoring, and they have continuous validation. And, in the case of Amazon, at least, you have tools within IAM and bucket policies to validate your permissions and give you, kind of a thumbs up or thumbs down view of it. I think that idea passes muster, but whether it's needed external to those specific commercial clouds and has value, as an open source effort or a multi-cloud effort, that I would love to see some more validation.
So has Scott from AWS comment?
No, he has not. Not that I've reached out directly to him, other than attributing, his earlier feedback from the call we had. So I, not having direct contact with him. If you wanted to reach out to him, that'd be great.
Yeah. I think I will reach out to him. I think we need to include their team a bit more. Like, they have a lot of PhDs that human resources.
Yes.
So So what are the next steps that you think would be the best next steps? So shall we looking for teams can sponsor a project, or?
Yeah, well, that's one question I had is, does this merit its own project? Is this a new something that we launch and call it something and set up its own GitHub and eventually it becomes a CNCF sandbox thing? I don't know. That's one pathway. Another pathway is we just, hopefully if there's a push to get this open source, that maybe Amazon or Azure or others would contribute something that already exists, so that we're not reinventing the wheel from scratch. I haven't really come to any decision on that level.
Also, from the challenges, I think there are a lot of very serious, even theoretical challenges. So
sure.
Yeah, it'll be very difficult, I think.
Well, I think the theoretical challenges are fairly mitigated if you contain the scope. So again,
yeah.
we know definitively that Amazon has a network, reachability analysis tool. That's the Heroes that I we know it has IAM validation in terms of roles and users and permissions. Azure has, I think, equivalent tools. I'm not as familiar with Azure as I am with AWS, but I believe they have both the network and their permissions tools. So if we were to just start there and say, let's build out that capability within the Kubernetes environment, so that regardless of where your Kubernetes is deployed, you've got RBAC policies, you've got network policies. Let's provide at least a similar level of validation, verification, and then that way that the output of that is some tool that allows you to check your policies before or after you deploy them. I think that gets us closer to on par with what you get in the commercial cloud with those tools. I think, in my understanding, now, yes, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to have a room full of PhDs who can vet everything that I just said and everything I'm about to say, which is, I think they largely assembled those solutions from existing solver tools and frameworks. So, yes, there's a lot of craft and innovation involved, I'm sure. I don't think we have to invent things from a theory and then be the first one on the planet to construct a working prototype. I think we just have to kind of follow the path that they put forward and then tailor it towards a Kubernetes environment.
Yeah. Okay.
So concretely, in absence of that consensus building, I don't know how long that will take. I will certainly reach out to folks and try to bootstrap some momentum. I will flesh out some of these very concrete examples and try to assemble a working prototype of sorts. That's here's say a Rego policy. Here's how I specify in a solver friendly way, and then feed that into Z3, if you will, and what comes out on the other end. I think if we can get it to that level of proof of concept, I think that would be a reasonable place to shoot for the next goal.
Yeah. So let's have like a MVP POC.
Yeah, exactly. And whether that's worthy of any attention or talks or slides or use to any updates to the SIG or to the talk or any other folks, I don't know. I defer to you guys, but at least it kind of closes the academic exercise in my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess one very specific thing is trying to get one of the SIG. I don't know if you have that capability. If either of you have kind of merge rights on the SIG security repo, but this is now updated and ready for merging, but it's kind of hanging out there as an open PR currently.
Yeah. I think I can do that. So I'll try. I think I have.
Review.
I don't know. I'm on the triage team, so maybe I can try. So let me just get in touch with Scott and let him or his team member take another round of checking out the PR, and if nothing else, I think we can just learn the PR first and moving on.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. By the way, thank you so much. This is a really well written
I don't know. Thanks,
Yeah,
you guys, for
article.
the feedback and all the conversations we've had. And a very interesting topic. I hadn't touched a lot of this formal verification stuff for many years.
Yeah.
I've used it before. I used it, gosh, 15 years back. So it's been a while, but never in such a very detailed, complicated system like Kubernetes.
Yeah. I was also thinking about like, say we have a project, like what will be the like deliverables? Like maybe we can actually ship like artifacts or like either container packages or like
Yeah.
forming a composable formal verification.
Maybe like a good goal would be is included in some kind of output read, or like is run for security audits, or I don't know, something.
Yeah, definitely.
Something like that.
Yeah. And maybe there will be like many research opportunities for like optimizing policy language on the compiler level, make it faster. That would be like fascinating. I've been digging around the MLIR stuff. Well, it's really complicated, but it's definitely very interesting.
Which one is that one?
So that's a project in TensorFlow, initiated by Chris Ladner, who's one of the author for LLVM. Yeah, they basically now try to optimize LLVM for machine learning, but there are also like other use cases for blockchain and whatever. Since like Ethereum is moving on to WASM, a lot of things are moving on to WASM. So I think in a nutshell, so what they do is the problem is that nowadays when you craft things like machine learning, those frameworks, right, like TensorFlow or PyTorch, you have to write a like specific AST for like TensorFlow XLA for TensorFlow graph in general, and then you have you need to do all the optimization in the middle, and then you have the backend. It sort of create a headache for Google because now you have CLang, you have Python, Rust, Julia, very different, all kinds of ASTs, and then you add TensorFlow, and so what Chris Ladner comes up with the idea is to define like a standardized component, or some they call it a dialect. So you don't need to like define specific ASTs optimization at the IR level, and allow target at the back end. So it'll be defined as dialect. So you define your specific requirement for your programming language as dialect, and I think their end goal is to integrate this new proposal into LLVM eventually. Yeah, that's the MLIR stuff. So if the policy language like similar to those we use for machine learning, which like involves a lot of vector calculations, then like similar optimization technique could be applied as well to speed up things. Like they talking about like polyhedral compilation optimization, which is another really complicated topic.
That is something beyond my current.
Yeah. So I've tried to catch up with like YouTube. There's a really great 2-part YouTube tutorial on the polyhedral compilation. I still can't wrap my mind around it. It's just so complicated. But yeah, again, very interesting. Okay. So any other topics?
Some housekeeping. So we'll give an update in 2 weeks to SIG off.
Yeah. Sure.
So I confirmed that. The other thing in news of the week is that there was the Capital One thing, and there was also the security audit was released.
Yeah.
And that would be another. And I think it might have mentioned policy briefly.
Oh, I haven't checked out the report yet. So, have you read the?
I haven't read them. I have the documents. They're on the SIG Security Slack channel.
Yeah. I think Chris shared on channel.
Yeah, here was the. Policies may not be applied, leading to a false sense of security.
Sounds familiar.
That was the main one. Let's see.
Okay. That's weird. Okay, maybe my VPN
just glossing over their first finding there. I guess one of the things they're saying is it's not so much if the policy. Otherwise, you could apply your manifest and have a nice policy, but it won't actually do anything.
Right.
Hey guys, this is Rita. I joined a few minutes ago and just listening. Just a bit of update for the PSP conversion into like using Gatekeeper project that I've been working on. So I've opened up a PR to push to add those policies in the Gatekeeper project. I would love for you guys to maybe play with it and see if there's any issues with it, right? Any alarming, anything screaming at you.
Is the PR at the Gatekeeper side?
Let me find.
You have a link. Yeah.
The PR, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because after I presented this at the Gatekeeper meeting, the team thought it makes sense to add it as part of Gatekeeper, just so that it's in one place. Take a look, because it looks weird to be under my name. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So this is basically merging PSPs with constraints, or is that?
Yeah, so it's basically like, because I think one of the questions was like, could I create these PSPs with Gatekeeper? And if so, how do I do it? And so this is basically a collection of all the constraints And they do basically the same thing as if you created the PSP configuration. As you can see, some of them are not there yet, but we were hoping that we get this merge and then add the rest there.
Yeah.
But the bulk of it are already there. Yeah. It took me like a while to understand a lot of these configurations. It's like I think the reasons why the PSPs are hard to use is just lack of documentation, to be honest. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, well, please let me know what you guys think. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, looking at the white paper from the security audit, I think it gives some good, this is like the quota. Sorry, I just spammed it in there, but this seems kind of relevant to the first discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, seems familiar.
Yeah. Administrators should audit access controls applied to cloud resources.
I had a question for you, Rita, just on the overall gatekeeper. It's been a long time since I jumped on one of those sessions. So is the idea that the PSP admission controller gets kind of replaced by gatekeeper? Is that how it's going to work?
Yeah, so Gatekeeper is a custom admission webhook, right? So essentially with the same configurations, the policies then get enforced by that particular admission webhook. And therefore it does same thing as the PSPs.
Got it. So Gatekeeper is essentially an Uber admission controller.
It's a very generic one that can do whatever you want. And that's why in this PR I put it under library, because the thought is that in the future we'll have a Gatekeeper library repo with all the libraries that we think people would want. So like a packaged solution, and PSP being one of them.
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah, here's the reference. The problem with pod security policies is they are widely used, important for securing clusters, but have just a few things that make it difficult to call them GA, and also no real momentum, or no one is exactly sure how or what should be the way to do that.
Yeah, and I would definitely encourage folks to check out the session, the recordings from SIG Auth where they talked about this. And I think two major issues jumped out. One was like what you said about hard to extend, right? Because you're touching entry, right? So it's hard to add new policies. So it's hard to extend it. And then the second thing is by default is basically not allow, right? So it's pretty hard to do anything out of the box unless you're already provided all the hooks so that it does what you want it to do and disallow everything else.
Yeah. PSPs were definitely mentioned in the security audit, because I think they found a few or a couple problems with them. A large one was like the persistent volume claims basically let you get around any host path restrictions you might have had. I think that was a known issue, but it's definitely shows how it's hard to actually make more further extensions in, especially at more of the host level, and have PSPs work correctly.
Do you have that information somewhere?
I think I linked in the chat the security audit.
Like the blog?
So in the blog, I think it has a link.
Oh, the white paper
So there's the white paper. There's the final report, which has some of the like vulnerabilities they found, or like the more kind of security audit type things, and then the white paper is the more like, I don't know, high level. That's the right word, but. And then I think there might be one more document that I did not yet read.
Yeah, I think there are like 4 documents Chrissy dropped. I think I can forward to the.
I also saw the Gatekeeper blog post.
Oh yeah, that finally got merged.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, we just released beta, so yay.
Hey.
Yay!
Stable APIs, yeah. Much waited.
Right.
Okay, any other topic?
Not that I can think of.
So let's reconvene 2 weeks later. That'll be
Okay.
21st.
First.
We are now on the same page with the SIG auth.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, they're a bit earlier, right? Their time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if like my visa comes through, I'll be at the Facebook and Google area in the week of September 2nd to 7th for the to have the open source firmware conference.
No problem.
Yep.
So like Mountain View, South Bay?
Yeah, Menlo Park and Mountain View, I think.
Great. That's right around my neighborhood. So if
you if you want to chat, we can do face to face.
All right. Forward to it.
I'm in San Francisco.
That's not far away.
Everything's far in Bay Area.
It depends on the traffic, or
Yeah, exactly.
And Uber.
But yeah, if you guys are willing, can definitely organize something. Are you all local to Bay Area, or?
I'm in New York.
Oh, okay.
You can fly, right? You can fly over.
Those red eyes are easy to do. I've done those many times.
I can't travel right now. We just got puppies.
Yes, that's a handful.
Oh, that makes traveling really hard.
For at least a little bit. Be traveling to California in October.
Cool.
But
Well, we should definitely do something and get as many of us together as possible. And if we have to FaceTime you and Erica, we'll do that.
all right, cool.
And the puppies. We want the puppies on there too.
Oh, the puppy's already right here, if you can see. Puppy's been here the whole time. One of them.
Oh, cute.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Turn on video.
I don't think we can improve on puppies. I think that pretty much tops it all.
Yeah. So that'll be like puppy request PRs.
Mm-hmm.
You have to approve them. Okay, then see you guys in 2 weeks. Okay.
All right, cool.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.